All right, good morning, distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen joining us on-site and online. Welcome to the third day of ISDR 2025 and the Technology Keynote Forum. Yesterday at the Public and Industry Keynote Forum, we focused on how design can achieve meaningful impact at a national level. And today we are going to look at how emerging technologies are reshaping design practices, creativity, and the way we experience the world. So for the start of today's sessions, we have prepared a special video message. This greeting was recorded by the Taiwan Cyber Ambassador and the first Digital Minister, Audrey Tang. With visionary leadership at digital innovation, civic technology, and open governance, Ambassador Tang has been a driving force behind Taiwan's transformation into a more participatory, transparent, and human-centered digital society. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in watching the video together.
IASDR 2025 attendees, I'm Audrey Tang, Taiwan Cyber Ambassador and First Digital Minister. Many see AI today as an inevitable march toward a distant singular superintelligence, powerful, autonomous, perhaps even beyond human control. Yet this vision overlooks the essence of what truly makes intelligence super: collaboration, creativity, and care. We should let you all in on a little secret. We are the superintelligence. Artificial intelligence at best does not replace human beings. It magnifies us, it empowers us, it upgrades our collective ability to solve problems, to innovate, and build bridges across divides. But AI's real promise lies not in replacing human intelligence, but in amplifying our cooperative intelligence. In Taiwan, we have demonstrated the power of AI-augmented democracy. Our alignment assemblies and ideathons turned heated debates like how to prevent deepfake scam into consensus-driven policymaking. And AI did not dictate the outcome. AI illuminates the uncommon ground. And through augmented collective intelligence, we discovered points of unity where traditional politics saw only division. So yes, Taiwan can help. And what does this mean for designers and innovators? Well, it means your role is now crucial because AI needs thoughtful and responsive design to ensure it serves humanity. And designers can shape technology that facilitates understanding, empathy, collaboration, rather than dialing up division and fermenting fear. The future world shaped by AI will reflect the values we embed today. And if the choice is openness, plurality, and democratic collaboration, then we build a world where AI strengthens human dignity and collective intelligence. This is not just optimism, it is practical, tested reality. So I challenge each of you to dream big, to design responsibly, and to create with compassion. Because when we truly augment our cooperative intelligence, no AI can surpass the power of humanity united. The future is not singular, it is plural. And we are the superintelligence. So we can free the future together. Thank you. Live long and prosper.
All right, so everybody, a big thank you to Ambassador Tang for the inspiring message. In the video, Ambassador Tang highlights that we as design scholars and practitioners are capable of shaping technology that foster understanding, empathy, and collaboration, and reminding us that together we are the superintelligence. So after this inspiring start, we will now move on to today's keynote. The theme of the session is Aesthetics of Intelligence. We will look into the intersections of aesthetics, design, and technology. And we are greatly honored to invite Professor Stefan Wensveen, Faculty of Industrial Design at Eindhoven University of Technology from the Netherlands as our keynote speaker. And following the keynote, we'll be joined by Professor Peter Lloyd from Department of Industrial Design Engineering of Delft University of Technology and also the president of IASDR to serve as our moderator to guide the deep dive conversations and discussions. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to invite you to join me in welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Professor Stefan Wensveen for the keynote forum.
Get my superpowers together. Yes. Aesthetics of intelligence. Today I will be talking about 4 things. First, a bit my personal account of aesthetics. Then I will talk about the past 3 waves of design aesthetics before introducing the 4th wave of aesthetics of intelligence. And I will end with 5 principles for design next. When you ask 10 people what is the definition of aesthetics, you probably get 10 different answers. So in order to at least give you my working definitions, I see aesthetics as a critical reflection on how people create, use, enjoy, or dislike design. I think it's fundamental to understand how design technology affects people's emotions, their understanding of the world, and their attitude towards life. I also like this one. It moves us from not seeing to seeing, from seeing to seeing differently, and disrupts our habits while also creating and suggest new habits. As I said, I'm Stefan Winsen, I'm professor in Eindhoven University of Technology. It's a small country, the Netherlands, and Eindhoven is what we call the brain port and also the capital of Dutch design. This was me 35 years ago. I was in my 2nd year of study industrial design engineering, and I must say I was kind of lost in the study. This was what my friends all really appreciated: brown aesthetics and products. Good design is aesthetic. I could agree with that. Good design is also unobtrusive, and I think in the other keynote from Johan, I think he also gave this principle: good design is obtrusive. And maybe the most famous one, less is more. For me, less was also somewhat boring, because this is what I liked. I went to the Groninger Museum with a bunch of older senior years because I was lost. And when I found this exhibition and the things that they show there, I thought like, wow, is this possible? Am I allowed to do such things as well? I mean, can you be so loud and bold in those designs? And then I realized how it related to my own personal values, where I was a skateboarder, into magazines, especially the typography and graphic design of David Carson, trying to be a surfer, and I thought this relates to my personal values. Taking inspiration from countercultures and challenging the status quo. Looking for bodily and emotional freedom going over a wave or skating on the streets. Values of freedom. So in my 2nd year design assignment, I tried to do this as well for a video text terminal, because I thought if the internet comes, people will use it for their banking. And I thought I never use it for banking, so it mostly closed, and then it opens up like a wave. My attempt. This is the 1st wave, aesthetics of appearance. So famous designs, and the technologies were new design materials and manufacturing for metal, glass, and in our case mostly plastics. Formal qualities were talking about shape and color, proportion and texture, and doing little exercise to train those formal qualities. In relation to social cultural qualities of simplicity and functionality and other modernist qualities, and form follows function, or form follows emotion, looking for more cultural diversity and personality. I never became a professional surfer, and I went back to university and started doing my PhD. And products had moved to interactive products. And being rock stars, we wanted to be, we had our pamphlet of 10 points, and these are important ones. Don't think products, think experiences. Don't think beauty in appearance, but think beauty in interaction. And don't think ease of use, but think enjoyment of the experience. We were not alone in that. Tony Dunn in the UK was talking about an aesthetics of use. And Lars Helnes and Johan Renström were talking about the aesthetics of computational artifacts. And aesthetics as the proper foundation for technology design, moving from efficient use to meaningful presence. So this was the second wave, aesthetics of interaction. Our work had a critique on the status quo, the cognitive approach. We thought we are more than human brains, we also have a body. And products can have affordances. And let's design products that take our affordances into account. My inspiration came from tangible interaction, and at that point we got some money to do research on emotionally intelligent products. And I was exploring the relationship between emotion and expression. And if freedom of interaction could lead to freedom of expression, could we design a project that can learn something from how you act on it? So instead of one single way, a diversity of ways of setting the alarm. A product to try out whether this was possible. This work was continued by Philip Ross, who looked into theory from pragmatist aesthetics, into the relation between values, ethics, and aesthetics, and designing different interaction ways that relate to people's values. This was the commercial project that came out of it. So attention to the appearance, but more so to the actual interaction with the light. So the second wave was made possible through emerging technologies of digital media, computation, interactivity, and sensor input and actuator output. And new disciplines came up, interaction design and UX, UI design. So some key examples from that era. And instead of talking about color and proportion and texture, we're talking about temporality and gaining sensitivity for modality and mapping input and output. And also here a relation to social cultural qualities, whether it's usability, functionality, and cognition, interaction follows function, or interaction follows more personal values. Moving ahead in time, 2010, 15 years ago, a new, maybe smaller wave came up. Aesthetics of transformation. New disciplines of critical design, service design, social design, and design activism. And Neil Pokoskinen wrote, when the attention of design shifts to social forces, aesthetic concepts try to products lose a great deal of their relevance, coming up with different aesthetic strategies in social design. One of those was the disruptive aesthetics, the political potential to disrupt or subvert existing systems of power. Talking about aesthetic acts, how they reorient perception and action, and thereby disrupting the social cultural forms of the everyday world. What else happened since then? Aesthetics became also a bit unpopular. I mean, for a lot, it was seen as styling, what designers do, and that's not what we do. So aesthetics in design has been a neglected area of research. Creativity and innovation are far more popular. Design was replaced by design thinking, and as Tonkin Wise said, it repressed the role of aesthetic judgment. I think also Dieter Rams realized that the beautiful aesthetics also created a sense of desire, and with desire, a lot of consumption. So aesthetics can also be bad. 5 years ago, I think we've seen a change, mostly due to this new technology, artificial intelligence. And here I also use a more broad definition, where I relate the technology of speech recognition, machine learning, and generative models. And smart products were combined with product aesthetics, so smart speaker borrowing the aesthetics of Brown, beautiful shapes, beautiful materials that nicely fit in the home. Is that what design should do? Or focusing on the UX aesthetics or the social aesthetics of these objects and these designs? Or is there a fundamentally new layer of aesthetics? So this brings us to the fourth wave, aesthetics of intelligence. I also see intelligence as a system, a combination of multiple types of intelligence, whether it's artificial, human, biological, cultural. And we can see it as a system, a technical system. But as soon as people are using it, it becomes a social technical system. And if more people are using it, it becomes a social cultural system and even a natural cultural system. And I see intelligence playing on these different levels within systems. So we had a set of formal qualities for appearance and for interaction. But what are the formal qualities of intelligence? Looking at different designs, different papers, literature, I came up with the following 5. And in order to make them a bit more challenging and inspiring for design, I used the formal qualities and combined them with some designerly terms and maybe call them principles. First one, aesthetics of uncertainty. Uncertainty also brings positive emotional experiences. The element of surprise, curiosity, and even can force us to act through reflection, exploration, and generation. It also relates to social cultural aspects, where some cultures want to avoid uncertainty, and other cultures are more tolerant to uncertainty. And where designers usually, or engineers usually want to move uncertainty towards certainty, we can also try to appreciate the beauty of uncertainty and sometimes see the ugliness of certainty. Computer says no. I was inspired by the work of my then not colleague, but now colleague, Jesse Benjamin, who wrote a paper with others about uncertainty as a material. Then I also thought if uncertainty is a material, then it also can have material qualities, and maybe even aesthetic qualities. Jesse then also inspired a master student in Eindhoven, Sam Taylor. He looked into products that he really appreciated and was really fond of and looked at their archetypes. Then playing around with the latest generative AI software, using his own little moped as inspiration. And then reflecting on the process. And with each new dimension, from 1 to 4 dimensional, the generative AI started hallucinating. And the role of uncertainty was changing in each new step. So then he went into his design process, training a model to detect his favorite guitar, the Stratocaster. Then using that model to order to detect, are there Stratocasters in my house? And then his calculator showed 78% Stratocaster. I thought, interesting. What would a guitar calculator look like if I ask it to generative AI? Well, you can see the examples here, and he continued with the one he thought was most interesting. Doing some more generative AI. From image to video. And then modeling the design that he thought was interesting, working on its affordances, printing it, spray painting it, putting the electronics in it, understanding it and programming it, and then playing it. The second principle is caring for instability. If uncertainty in post-phenomenology is on the perception side, I was wondering what's on the action side. I thought instability. So we can care for the instability of systems. We can also care for the stability or neglecting the stability of systems. And again, looking at different ways of system, we can look at hardware failure, AI bias, democracy, and maybe even biodiversity, as systems that are stable or actually unstable. And we need to care for those systems. Looking at AI bias, a while ago, this is what generative AI generated, or Mid-Journey, when you would imagine a doctor. So Mid-Journey recreated that, and this is a portrait of a CEO. That this care for instability can also go wrong is what Google Gemini showed in 24, trying to compensate for gender and racial representation bias in AI. The system was creating ahistorical images. So it's not that easy to care for instability. My colleague, Penkai, is also caring for instability. And he showed his paper at the ISDR conference yesterday about AI hallucination and bias, and instead of trying to resolve it, using its features as a social glue for digital placemaking between migrants and locals. In a bigger way, I think we should also care for instability and weighing the environmental costs, financial cost of large language models. The third principle is about harmonizing agency, and I think this is actually the most important one. Agencies can be harmonized, and they can also be dissonated. And we can talk about balance, human, AI, but I think it's a bit more complex. We should see it as this multiplicity of agents, all the agents that are involved in a system. And also look at the different capacities. So humans are more than just typing prompts. They have perceptual motor skills, emotional skills, social skills. And machines can pretty good detect, predict, identify, and generate. The harmony is a bit more interesting than balance. It's generally the result of contraries, for it is the unity of multiplicity and the agreement of discordances. Another colleague, Lenneke Kuijer, used those principles in her work for a smart thermostat. And instead of focusing on full automation, she's challenging the balance between human learning and effort and convenience and system automation. And using multiple agents, the humans, but also heating, ventilation and air conditioning technology, but also the sun and outdoor temperature to inform the thermostat. Out of a motivation of caring for the instability, not just for the home system, but also for the planetary system. And instead of fully automating it, maybe people should actually do some effort in order to gain a better understanding of how their home works in sun and in heat and in winter. The fourth principle is expressing intentionalities. So intentionalities can be expressed, but they can also be hidden. And what do we do with unintentionalities? When something happens that was unintended, do we hide it or do we actually express it? Because agentic AI is learning to understand intention and not instructions. And often this is proper prompt writing. But I think, again, we have more skills than just writing good prompts. That was happening inside of the car, but also outside of the car, you can express intentionalities, the work of the Bargadé. That expressing intentionalities is not always a good thing, or it can be used wrong, is shown in the work of Sabrina Hauser, where, together with co-authors, talked about the rift between appearance and true character, between the aesthetics and the ethics. Because this is from 1960. I mean, this is a record player and two speakers. They appear as a record player and two speakers, and that is actually also what they are. But how about this? Yes, there's a record player, there are two speakers, but it is much more than a record player and two speakers. But does it really show its true intentions behind it? It's kind of hiding the intentions of what Google wants us to do and what wants us to tell to them. So here, intentionalities are hidden. The fifth principle is a bit more looking towards the future. What are the consequences of what we do? Because a system can have emergence. And while we cannot really predict it, we can anticipate that it will happen. Emergence occurs when an entity is observed to have properties its parts do not have on their own. Properties or behaviors which emerge only when the parts interact in a wider whole. So how can we anticipate things that are happening? We can also choose to ignore them. Some of unexpected future events, they can be small, like an everyday crisis or a micro breakdown, but they can also be larger. And we should also anticipate larger effects, rebound effects. We try to do something right, but there will be a rebound, and it will not be right. Also emergence in closed systems and open-ended systems, and co-evolution within systems. I close off with this final example.
Clay cannot be mastered. It must be negotiated with. What if we approached AI the same way? An AI was trained on my earliest works in clay. Then, I asked it to imagine the unimaginable. Ceramic jealousy, ceramic divorce. It produces images that looked like sculptures, but filled with many impossibilities. The challenge was not the digital image, but in bringing it back to reality, giving weight to pixels. To build them was to reverse engineer a memory of a process that never happened. The AI's mistakes became my inspiration. A negotiation between digital logic and the physical reality of clay. Not control, but acceptance of flaws. Not consistency, but creativity in chaos.
And I presented them as 5 separate principles. But just like color and shape and texture should be working together, also do the principles. Also shout out to the people who made this video. The AI's mistakes became my inspiration, not control, but acceptance of flaws. Not consistency, but creativity and chaos. A negotiation between digital logic and the physical reality of clay. Ceramic jealousy, ceramic divorce, images that look like sculptures, but filled with many impossibilities. And imagine the unimaginable. So this is what I want to give to you. 5 formal qualities of intelligence that can be turned into 5 principles for the aesthetics of intelligence. For design next, if I'm dreaming big, I see this as a design and research program for the next 5 to 10 years even. In order to develop an aesthetic sensitivity and creativity in line with technology, and develop an aesthetic compass in line with personal, human, and societal values. And for those of you who want to take it a bit smaller, I would suggest take 2 of the principles and start building from there. Some acknowledgement. I want to thank the ISDR organization, especially Lin Chen, for allowing me to be on this stage, and my colleagues from industrial design. This was Aesthetics of Intelligence. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, a big thank you to Professor Stefan Westving for the inspiring and forward-thinking presentation. So now, before we move into the forum discussion, I'd like to invite our moderator to the stage. So please, everybody, join me in welcoming Professor Peter Lloyd from Department of Industrial Design Engineering from Delft University of Technology, and also the President of ISDR. Let's welcome him.
Okay, I feel at home in my my living room now. Stefan,
Thank you.
thank you very much for
inviting me in your living room.
a very inspiring presentation. I love the way that you traced your relationship with aesthetics through from the earliest experiences that you had right through to the present day. And I think the title of the talk, The Aesthetics of Intelligence, really opens up a lot of things for discussion, and I like the way that it's really addressing what's happening now, and the 5 principles that you've identified, I think, are really interesting to think about and explore. Also, the link to the first video from Audrey Tang. Audrey Tang is a very impressive person. I encourage you to look at Audrey's work and what she's done. Incredibly intelligent, incredibly impressive. And I think the idea that came across in the video was the idea of collaboration. And I think you ended with the video there of clay and AI and the idea of dialogue and collaboration. I think that's something that we're going to have to explore as we go into this new field of AI. So thank you very much for your talk. We're going to have a discussion. We have three very interesting discussants that I will bring on stage now. First, I'd like to bring on stage Associate Professor Rongwei Liang from National Taiwan University of Science and Technology. Please take a seat at the end. Professor Liang is an associate professor in industrial design. He has a background in computer science, and his current work looks at the interactions, slow interactions, seamless interactions, interaction design. So he's a very good person to discuss some of the issues coming out of Stefan's talk. Our second discussant is Shiquan Chen. Please join me on stage, Shiquan. Shiquan is the Senior Vice President of Compal Electronics Incorporated, a Taiwanese firm that you may not have heard of, but actually there's quite a high proportion that the equipment that you use comes from Compal Electronics. Shiquan has a background in arts and culture, and also a sort of philosophical attitude to thinking about design. He manages a huge team of designers, 200 designers in Compal Electronics, and they're really developing some cutting-edge products. So he brings a sort of industrial perspective to this subject. And last but by no means least, I'd like to invite Shainan Liao from the Shainan is Vice President of Research and Development at the Taiwanese Design Research Institute that we've heard a lot about and is extremely impressive. He's also a distinguished professor at the National Cheng Kung University in the Institute of Creative Industries and Design. Shainan has a background in cognitive science, so brings a sort of psychological perspective to aesthetics. And also a sort of a government perspective in his work at TDRI. So welcome everyone. I think we're going to have a nice discussion. I'll get each discussant to briefly introduce themselves, and then we'll begin to explore some of the topics that Stefan raised in his presentation. So first, if I could turn to Rongwei, please could you describe the work that you do and also how aesthetics and intelligence sort of impact that work, and any thoughts around that?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am Ronghui Liang, an associate professor from Taiwan Tech, and such a big stage. I'm a little bit nervous. So this morning I just used the ChatGPT to ask for a self introduction of Professor Ronghui Liang, and certainly I find it's almost all correct. Rather than 2 years ago, it's almost fake and so-called hallucination. So my background is computer science, and I major in virtual reality, computer graphics, and interactive system. And then afterwards, I'm more interested in teaching interaction design, so then I transfer to the design department. And so now I am teaching computer graphics and so-called design fiction and speculative design, and I'm almost more interesting so-called object-oriented or scene-centered design. But mostly I am inspired by Johann's slow technology and also Peter Van McCarthy's technology as experience. So I coined the terms called slow speculation, which the intention is to put everyday personal data into a complex and speculative form in our everyday lives, so such that we can do some speculative experience in our everyday life in terms of intertwining our personal information, personal data. Such an interaction or speculation will make the speculative thinking into our everyday activity. So afterwards, the explosion of so-called generative AI, I find it's very, very challenging to use generative AI in our everyday life and to facilitate our speculative experience in our everyday life. So this is a very brief introduction to my own work. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Very, very interesting. If I could turn to Xikuan Qian, can you describe the work that you do and how aesthetics intelligence are sort of impacting your working life too?
Yeah, thank you, Peter. I'm glad that I wake up early morning today to see David Carson, Etta Soces, Michael DeLucci. I'm doing all this day work that has nothing to do with all this good old days, modernism, postmodernism, structuralism, and all these things. Yeah, I'm also teaching in universities, and we seldom touch on this topic, so that's a shame. Anyway, I'm working. I work for Compare Electronics. We represent 26% of the laptop computers that's manufactured on the planet today. So 1 in every 4 is built by us, maybe also one of yours. But also AI servers, healthcare products, yeah, and AIoTs, the likes. So I have a team of 500 product designers, graphic designers, UI, UX, color material finishing, consumer marketing intelligence expertise, focusing on helping our brand companies, OEMs, on their portfolio roadmaps. So I'm very into this kind of topics. Although I do have observations about the phenomena that is happening today that I feel very, very different from my understanding as a product designer when I was a student. I guess I'm more or less the same generation as Peter and Stefan, so I think we more or less have the same understanding of aesthetics and design principles, good design principles, but maybe not today as a consumer, especially young generation Z. The OEMs referring to brand companies like Dell, HP, Lenovo, Apple, Samsung, within the last 2 decades, almost too long, within the last 2 decades, they are trying to come up with artifacts that they are trying to find the highest common factors in the name of ESG. So they want to come up as little SKUs as possible, as little aesthetic as possible, because it was being translated into this is less carbon footprint being burned. So in the name of ESG, sustainability, green, things are becoming simpler, easier, less obstructive, less messy in terms of stylings. But at the same time, we have this so-called AI beginning on 1957, but mostly we know it as 2022, the emergence of this open AI. And the Generation Z start to think that, well, if a box like an iPhone that has a spirit that can constantly being upgraded, OTA, firmware, why does the appearance is not showing the inner spirits that's also being upgrading? And so they are tired of this very geometric stylings that have been the mainstream aesthetics for the past 2 decades for too long already. And so you will see in all these Kickstarter run by Generation Z most of the time, that they are coming up with all these so-called AI companion pets that utilize the brain of mobile phones. So you put a mobile phone on this pet, and then the pet will react to whatever content that's inside. So they are thinking that they want to extend this spirit onto a form of extension and expression that is not allowed on a piece of glass iPhone. And you will see this more and more. And so there's a misgap in the understanding of consumer language between OEMs, brand companies, versus the end consumers today. And maybe we can touch on that a little bit more as we speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. And finally, I turn to Shainan. Please could you introduce yourself through the work that you do and your thoughts about how aesthetics and intelligence impact that work.
I will make my self-introduction shorter because I have a long question. Okay. My background is the cognitive psychology. And, I recent research focus on integrate the culture and creativity. I teach in the National Cheng Kung University, and I found a creative industries design institute. Actually, it's promote cultural industries with design. Recently, I try to integrate the technology and the culture with the design to promise the social impact. So today's topic quite related to my study, and I really got some insight from your talk. And for example, in this conference, I contribute a talk about multi-agent, multi-intelligent agent collaboration. Maybe we can discuss later. And also, I studied interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary team in promoting the innovation in the organization. And I think that affects up the impact of the AI as a strange, intellectual agents. There are lots of opportunity or challenge. So maybe later we can discuss that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to all our discussants. So let me begin with a first question to Stefan before we go into other discussion. Stefan, I know you're a surfer, and you described the different waves of aesthetics, which I thought was quite an interesting sort of metaphor. And the waves are sort of getting bigger. And I know as designers, we tend to be quite, we like to have our contained environment. We like our nice products. We like things to work as expected, even if there's some sort of expression. And it seems to me that you've picked up on some themes in terms of instability and sort of, I guess, messiness. And so my question is, are we prepared for the wave that's coming? Is it a wave that's even too big to surf? Or do you think we are prepared for this as a surfer?
Actually, the 10th point of our pamphlet was metaphors suck. Of course, in the text it was a bit more nuanced, but that was the title. So I'm always hesitant about going into metaphors. But are we prepared for the future waves? I think we are. But I think this relates, I think, to the fifth principle, anticipating emergence. I don't know that we think that we know what is going to happen next. Whether there will be singularity, whether there will be a big bubble of AI bursting and we will go back to what we did before, whether other things on the planet or in politics will happen. But I think as designers, we are trained to be resilient, to be able to work with different situations. I think we're better prepared if we work more together and that we can rely on other disciplines. So I like to believe that we're ready, but I don't know for sure.
Okay. Well, perhaps we can go deeper into this. So let me turn first to Rongwei. Please respond to Stefan's presentation, and maybe you have a question for him too.
Okay, very inspired talk today, and I have two questions to ask. The first is about the temporality. As we know, the intelligence GAI, which progress very, very fast and very speedy change. So on the other hand, our embodied skill, our body material is a very slow, with slower pace. So what do you think about how can we design or integrate these two different paces of fast intelligence and slow materiality of our body. And the second is in terms of aesthetics. So I want to know whose aesthetics, humans or objects or the machines. So what do you think about how, who has the voice to articulate aesthetics, objects or machine or algorithm or human? So what do you think about the first, temporality, the second, whose aesthetics?
Yeah, I think the temporality is a very interesting question. I think in education we're also struggling in what way do we keep up with all the latest developments. I think it's pretty impossible as an individual to keep up with all these developments. But I would like to believe that as a collective, we might be able to keep up with those latest developments. I think in our education, students are very free to choose what they're doing and which tools they're using. And the interesting thing is, I mean, some of our students are far ahead in adopting the latest developments. And by allowing them to do that, and also creating an environment where we're sharing that information, I think as a collective, we can try to keep up. I agree with you that, I mean, we still have our reasonably okay bodies. We have our reasonably okay brains. So I think things will go faster, but I believe with good collaboration as a collective, I hope we can try to keep up. And your second question was again? Oh yeah, who's aesthetic? I think that's a very good point. I think in time when we look at aesthetics, that has always been an issue. I think whose aesthetics are we promoting? Is it the Braun aesthetics and we should all relate to that? Or are there different cultures with different aesthetic values? And therefore I chose to show the designs from Memphis as this radical alternative to the existing aesthetics. So I think it's good to have a plurality of aesthetics in order to demonstrate that we are diverse. The other thing is indeed, I think currently the systems that industry puts out there, they determine the aesthetics for us. And I think my talk is also a plea that as designers, I think we should take some of that responsibility back to us and not design beautiful packages for their sometimes ugly aesthetics, sometimes helpful aesthetics, and reclaim that as humans, we should be in control of how to deal with aesthetics and how to deal with values instead of systems determining their values upon us.
Okay, maybe just a quick follow-up on that. So you showed the examples of Memphis and Dieter Rams' very visual kind of aesthetics, and intelligence is a much more intangible phenomena. Is it a temporal aesthetics that you're talking about? Is it purely interactive, or are there other kind of formal elements to the aesthetics of interaction?
I think aesthetics will change indeed, and I think the temporality. I mean, the visual is the thing that is immediate to us. I mean, we can immediately see it, and it has an effect on us. I think the aesthetics of systems, it will take longer before they dawn upon us, and I think at specific instances, if they break down, then suddenly we might realize the ugliness that's behind it. Or other people should point it out through alternative aesthetics that, wait a minute, why are we accepting their way of doing it? And by actually, and I think also that's the role of aesthetic, to provide an alternative that then, by seeing the alternative or experience the alternative, realize, why did we take that for so long? So yes, I think the visual aesthetics are very immediately, I mean, you can immediately appreciate a brown, but also immediately appreciate the alternative then. And I hope that with systems, I think as designers, we also provide alternatives in order to disrupt our habits of we should not be accepting this. There is an alternative.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Let me turn to Shiguan and yeah, your thoughts on Stefan's keynote and also maybe some questions for him too.
Yeah, I'm working in an environment whereas working with 500 designers, but at the same time working for the ICT industries. So I'm looking at the evolvement of technology. I'm starting to be very nervous as a design professional. I see myself and my colleagues as an interpreter of technology. If we somehow know the meaningful and the spirit and the purpose of this existing of this artifact, we give it a semantic or metaphor so that the market can understand what this product is about. I'm starting to feel that we're starting to lose that color palette. What I mean is that think about this AI. Most of us in this room, we encounter AI probably not from 1957, but from 2022. Which is only 3 years ago. When it first emerged, I heard a lot of mathematics experts, scientists that says, oh, don't be afraid of AI, it's just a LLM that's trying to guess what's the best next word. Come on. 3 years now, you know, all our PhD students are using these tools to write their thesis, and they are smarter than most of us, to be honest. People are trying to predict if AGI and ASI will be soon, which more or less, I guess, will be within this decade. We are dealing with not just the classical computers, but we have more than about 150 quantum computers manufacturers in the world right now, 50 in the US, maybe 50 in China, and 30 in the Canada and Asia Pacifics. We are dealing with technologies that we have no idea about. Remember this Schrodinger's cat trying to describe the characteristics of the quantum superposition, where a particle can be at different stages at once. Until it's been revealed, right? So Schrodinger's cat can be alive and dead at the same time before the box is open. For most of us, what the hell does that even mean, right? And so there's no answer anymore. If the answer that we get from a classical computer is 0 and 1. Yes or no, black and white. It's very easy, we understand, we catch up. Quantum computers has endless ideas that we human beings cannot understand. So we are creating a species, if I may call, that we cannot understand. And we're starting to lose the color palette, aesthetics, whatever we call it, metaphor, semiotics, whatever, to give it a coding that we understand what's going on. And so I'm fear maybe the entire design at large industry have to be worried about that in the end, we are not trying to explain what's going on, but just to sugarcoating it into something that we understand, but not necessarily the true essence of what's inside. That's probably also my question.
Tough question.
Tough question. I don't know. Maybe, maybe that's just the uncertainty that we don't have an answer for immediately, but that we should somehow be able to deal with, and somehow, well, maybe embrace that there is this uncertainty of where things are. And then maybe follow it up with some of the other principles that you still care for, then the instability that it creates in systems, and that at heart maybe we have our own aesthetic values where we somehow feel what is the good way to continue and what is a way that we should try to avoid. So yeah, maybe that's the best answer I can give to that question now. But
Okay, thanks, Stefan. And let me turn to Shainan. If you describe your reaction to Stefan's presentation and also a question for Stefan too.
an easy one, please.
An easy one, yeah. One where we can have some certainty.
Easy one. Actually, you know, in our last, panel review, you are absent. And Xi Guan asked Peter, say, will you like us, make the panel go smoothly or be more critical challenge? Xi Guan asked, not me, Xi Guan asked. Okay, I'm kidding. But, yesterday afternoon, Peter sent me your PowerPoint, your slides. So many pages and inspiring. So I changed my questions. But actually, I do, have lots of insight from your talk, so I would say frontier or foresight talk that. And one of the major insights is, if we reflect the history of our human civilization, as your review, right? Radical culture and radical technology innovation does not necessarily will lead a good progress, and from time to time suffers, right? So, I want to quote the insight of the Steven Pinker on his book that the Enlightenment Now. And he attributed that a successful culture, the civilization progress we human ever had, always have a wonderful, integration of the technology and the humanity. Okay, technology is a kind of the functionality innovation, and the humanity maybe is a meaning, innovation. So, personally, I identify a very key role of future design will be the, the meaning innovation promoter. Maybe from the culture, maybe from literature, history, something. So, it's my question, after your insight or after your the future possibility that since AI, AI is not just a tool, AI is an intelligent agent, meaning that he have ability to act and with intentionality. So can I say that AI is not only the functionality innovation driver, AI could be the cultural or social, innovator, right? Agent. Actually, last year in Nature, there's a paper that's the cultural machine. And the scholar predict that, since we, heavily use the AI already joined the human cultural evolution. Because AI are very powerful in generate variety, okay? And AI are very powerful in selecting the optimal, outcome, which are the very engine of the cultural evolution, okay? So, my question is that since given such, radical technology, the intellectual agents, we have AI, what's the role of our human in the value of the meaning, creation through the collaboration with the designer in general, rather, and the AI? That's my question. That's...
It's not an easy one. I think in the Netherlands we have this notion of key enabling technologies. And on the other hand, the societal challenges. And in the Netherlands, we've positioned design around key enabling methodologies in between the technologies and in between society. And I think that is where we should position ourselves and not only be responsible for technology pushing into society, but also for understanding society and then see which technologies were needed. But that's also a struggle, I think, for design, because I think some of the forces behind technology, or some of the forces that are in society, capitalism, I think, are so much stronger almost than design can ever be. So I'm not overestimating the power of design in that sense, because I think the forces around technology push and the forces in society that are currently happening in politics, I don't think as designers we can resolve that. I think we can. And maybe that was also in the title of the video, less hope, more action. I think we can at least act without having the idea that we will solve these issues. I don't have that hope, I must say. But I think we can still act and try to make things work within where we have some power of making a change. And I think that is what we should be doing.
Okay, maybe I can bring it back to the sort of practicalities of designing, the activity of designing, and how of the things that you're describing, the new, the 5 themes that how should designers use those things in their design processes? Because to a certain extent, the design process itself is something that's uncertain and unstable, and there's kind of emergent phenomena. That's always been the case. What are the new capabilities that designers need to develop, I think, in order to interface more effectively with these new forms of intelligence?
I don't know. Maybe I will come back to that, my answer later, but I think for now. I don't think the job of designers has changed that much. It's just that the materials that we're working have changed so dramatically. And with that, I think that I don't know, when we were working with plastics, yes, there was some uncertainty about how the material would behave. But I think currently those materials are far more uncertain than they were. The systems that we're designing have much more instability than they used to have. I mean, we cannot rely on we cannot rely on the planet anymore, or rely on our responsibility in that planet. So I think the magnitude of uncertainty, instability has dramatically increased. And I think that is the most difficult thing. But then I think the skills and the competences, I think, should in essence, will be the same. Being able to integrate knowledge from different areas, being able to be transdisciplinary, to have a value system for yourself as a designer where you can work from and where you can find out what you think is the right way to go and what not. So I think in that sense, design has not changed that much. It's just the materials that we're working with and the systems that we're operating in, they have changed significantly.
I think also something that I notice is with this increasing instability and also the power that AI brings, it brings a lot of stress for students. The opportunities are literally endless, and I sort of see a lot of stress of which decisions do I make in the students that I'm teaching. So, yes. Our time is almost up. We have 1 minute left. Can I briefly get you to address the theme of the conference? What happens next? what happens next for each of you individually? What are you looking to the future for? So first, Rongwei.
Yeah, I
Briefly.
think, very brief. I think the new generation will grow up with generative AI, and the concern is about how they can distinguish or how they can use their power with their agency and the generative AI. I think it is a very big issue for the next step. So what if we give up our power and we all surrender, or we just living as a guided as the AI outputs? That would be another dangerous situation. So I think maybe how can we teach, or how can we live with the post generative AI life, especially for new generation, is very important.
Okay, thank you. Shikuan, what's next for you and your compile?
I think design is probably a profession in the past. From now on, honestly, we are trying to come up with languages, metaphors that is talking about a scale economy. We're trying to come up with the highest common factors based on cultural understandings to come up with things that are manufacturable by today's technology, moldings and templates and all these things, color material finishing, all this are based on today's technology. So it has to be scalable, and so we have to teach all this. But now we are into an era of AI where there's a movie for one, because scalability is no longer an issue, because we can create a movie within seconds, and then with a few minutes you can create a movie for one. And with technologies like 3D printers, 3D printers and all this very personal preference manufacturing process, I'm not sure if we need a design.
I think that's a good answer. And lastly, Shannon, very quickly, what's next for you? Yeah.
Inspired by the talk today, I think that the emergency, agency, and uncertainty really a very new, idea. And I want to have a conclusive, insight is, since we have such new and powerful, AI, I mean the intellectual agency, it's not we think about how to use it, but we may inspire, our reflection upon what is the value and what is the intelligence for our human. We can, also have some mini innovation. So I am very positive to the possibility. As I said, enlightenment is coming.
Okay, that's a nice point to end on. I'd like to thank all my discussants for very informative questions. I have a whole load of questions here that weren't answered. I think you've opened up a very interesting subject, Stefan. So most of all, I'd like to thank you for an inspiring and excellent talk. Thank you very much. So yes, that's the end of today's keynote, and I hope you enjoy the coming sessions for today.
Yes, so actually I think we do still have about 15 minutes, so yes. So
Okay.
Actually the reminder was for your part, but we still have some time for questions from the audience, so if anybody have questions, I think we can address them now.
So we do have a bit more time.
Yes.
Are there any questions from the audience at all? Okay, we have one. Toshi at the front.
Thank you very much, Stefan. Very nice presentation today. And here, joining your presentation, I really reminded the aesthetic of impossible. Okay. Now, can I give you a kind of comment between the intelligence and the impossible in between these 15 years?
Toshi is referring to the, I think that it was a keynote lecture of my mentor and friend, Kees Overbeke. who gave I think, a really inspiring keynote on the aesthetics of the impossible. Yes, I have been inspired by him in knowing ways and also in unknowing ways, and I think we're also dealing almost with an aesthetics of impossible. But for me, the aesthetics of impossible, maybe there was a difference between Case and me, that I'm a bit more hopeful. But I think he was also addressing the hopefulness. Yes, I think there are clear relationships between the aesthetics of impossible and the aesthetics of intelligence. And I'm addressing more the material that we as designers are working with. And I think he was addressing more the challenge that designers were working with. Maybe that's the main difference between that presentation and my presentation.
Okay, we have a question from Don at the front. Hi, Don.
I don't have a question. Because I was so taken by the opening talk and then the discussion that it changed my view of things. And so the first question I had in mind was, what? What is aesthetics? The way you talked about it, I didn't understand aesthetics. So of course I picked up my phone and I asked my AI. And I said, give me a creative definition, a short creative definition of aesthetics. And here's what it told me. Aesthetics is the secret language of appeal, the silent conversation between your senses and the world around you, deciding what makes a sunset breathtaking or a design feel just right. I liked that. And the more I thought, the more I said, what we are talking about is the future. But actually, the future was yesterday. So we're now talking about how we live in the future. And the designs that we make change the affordances of our possible activities, which therefore changes the world, which therefore changes us and society and humanity. And that's what I took from this entire discussion, so thank you.
Thank you, Don. We have any more questions? We have one here.
Can I go?
Here.
Oh, yeah. Hi. I love the comment about design being kind of over, right? Like I like that. We created a new form of technology that has become an abstract labor source that can do things that we otherwise require a lot of turmoil and hard work through. But as a designer, I also find like the act of design is my expression of my human experience. I see the world, I interpret it, I deliberately pursue something towards an intended outcome. And like I see a lot of the discussion here focus around the economic and productive value of design as producing things for the world. But what about the kind of internal individual pursuit of design as an expression of oneself? That seems unfair to be, robbed by AI. I want to keep some of that. How does that look for, are we all going to become artists instead?
A question for anyone on the panel here, but maybe.
Could be. The examples that I've shown were all creative, aesthetic expressions of the designers themselves. I doubt whether any of those designs will ever work in a commercial industrial setting. But I also see it, well, I think we, as educators and working in a university, have a dual responsibility. I think one is the one that you are referring to, and training them and allowing them to be creative with materials in order to explore their own values in relationship to what will happen in the world. But on the other hand, I'm also working in a university of technology and not in an art school. So my other responsibility is also, and our responsibility as teachers, is to educate them with the opportunity of getting a job. Or a meaningful life, but you also need a job in order to create some meaning, I think. And that's also what we need to do as a responsibility, but I also feel it as like, yeah, maybe that's something that they have to do as soon as they get into industry. And then industry's job is to train them to fit in their way of working. And as a university, I think we should train them to be critical designers with a sense for their own creative practice. So.
Maybe Shiguan, you have a comment there too about how you see designers being replaced, maybe, or
No, I like the question because it reminds me of how industrial designers or design at large is very different from art and artists. So if you're an artist, you have a lot of vocabularies of metaphor that you wanted to use. You don't have a specific target audience. You express whatever you like. And those who buy your arts must have to understand your metaphor in order to understand your artwork. So it's almost a one-way communication. But for designer, it's a much harder work because we have a limited vocabularies because the consumer understands only this much of the metaphors. And we can only use this to make it less SKUs because we're not creating a lot of SKUs, again, in the sake of ESG. So the audience question is, if I have a very diverse understanding of internal needs, then we become artists, yes. Then we have to use the tools of whatever AI and 3D printers and whatever future technologies that is involved, that we can produce things that talks of our own emotion that nobody can understand. And that's why I see maybe that's the absence of design in the future.
Thank you. I think actually another metaphor that you introduced, the idea of intelligence as a material, I think also sort of implies some kind of craft, a return to the craft of design too, that you're sort of engaging with the material in a sort of crafting way rather than a sort of intentional design way. So maybe that's another future for designing.
Correct, yes.
Yeah. Time for one more question. Fun final question. Tekjin, did you have a question? Yeah. Oh, no, we've got one right at the back. Yeah, let's go right to the back.
Thank you, Stefan, and all the people give the talk. I really like the presentation, and I have a follow-up question, and I think it could be a pretty good ending for this session. So we are talking about AI, and as a designer, researcher, and practitioner, we saw this kind of technology we have a very optimistic attitude towards it. We are told to embrace the technology and use it in our practicing. But I'm also concerned, what if the future that the AI start to replace some of the work? And I have a question, do you have any practical advices for us that can make sure that we will not replaced by AI, and how do we keep up with the technology waves?
You mean as a designer or as a design researcher?
Both.
Ooh.
You haven't had the easiest of questions, Stefan.
I recognize what you say. I think within our own department, I think we have people that embrace the technology and the opportunities, and we have people that resist the technologies and try to stay away from it as far as possible, and in that way resort more to crafting approaches. I think it should be ideally in some harmonious way, but I don't know whether that's possible, of being able to on the one hand bridge or embrace the opportunities while also staying critical. And I think in that you will develop skills that will be inevitable, I think, also in industry, while also keeping the skills of being critical, being true to yourself and to the people that you care for that don't have those opportunities. It's not an easy thing, but I would hope that you can do both sides within your institute.
Okay, I think we have to leave it there. This is really the end. So again, thank you to all my guests, the discussants, Ronghuai, Xiguan, Shainan, and also to Stefan for his great talk. So thank you very much.
All right, so once again, thank you everybody for your valuable inputs. And before we wrap up, we'd like to invite President Ji Yizhang of TDRI to present the certificate of appreciation to everybody on the stage. So once again, thank you so much everybody for such a lively and thought-provoking session. Thank you very much for all your valuable insights and giving us such a fruitful morning where we can all have some new ideas regarding the application of AI in the future. All right, so everybody, let's have a photo together. And also, everybody, as we wrapping up this session, I would like to remind you that our morning parallel sessions will begin at 11 a.m. on the 6th floor of the Taipei New Horizon building. So please follow our staff to the session rooms. And also, a quick reminder for those who register for the gala dinner, the dinner starts at 5:30 p.m. on the 14th floor. And please remember to wear your pin for admission. We still have a few seats available for dinner, so if you'd like to join, please visit the front desk for on-site registration. 好，再一次的非常感谢大家的参与哦。那上午接续的分场研讨会将会在11点钟在台北文创大楼6楼举行，请大家跟随工作人员的引导前往。同时也提醒大家，有报名今天晚上 Gala Dinner 的贵宾，晚宴将在5点半在台北文创大楼的14楼开始。那我们的现场还有少许的位置，大家如果有想要参加，可以到前台来进行现场的报名。有报名的贵宾也请记得携带您的报名徽章，以利进场。好，再一次的感谢大家的参与，也敬祝各位有一个充实美好的下午以及夜晚，谢谢。